you for being here with us. And thanks for coming out here and presenting at last year's conference. Lots has happened since then. Can you hit some of the highlights, talk about what's happening now, who's working on what, and tell us what you see, where you see things heading. For folks who are watching this, Todd was ACOR's Senior Vice President, Policy and Government Relations for well over a decade, where he led strategic integration of policy development, research, external communications, and interaction with federal and state governments and regulatory officials. He has over 25 years experience in federal and state policy, renewable energy market design, business development, and sales. Prior to joining ACOR, he directed global and US policy at BP and BP Solar. He also served in several US government positions, including at the White House, at the US Senate, US EPA, and OSHA. He's served on the board of directors of the Solar Energy Industries Association, that's SEIA, the Solar Alliance, the SEPA, Electric Power Association, the Texas Renewable Energy Industries Association. Earlier on, received his BS from Boston College and a law degree from Washington College of Law at American University. So we're very pleased to have you with us. Why don't you launch now?
Great. Thank you, Fred. Great to be with you again, and I very much appreciated being part of your kickoff conference last year, looking to generate more solar power in the Solar Valley area of California, a place rich in solar resource. I did depart to ACOR at the end of last year after 10 terrific years there. I think helping grow the market for solar and renewable energy and boosting the policy support across the board from Congress, as well as key regulatory agencies like FERC, and then also the key states, all of them coming together, working together in a nice example of American federalism to promote, solar deployment and investment. And I think that mix of work across the government apparatus in the United States has really helped deliver a robust market for the U.S. Of course, this year we are in this area of unknowns in some degree. We've had COVID hit us, and of course we're in an election year. So things seem a bit strange, and they are. This is what's happened this year is unprecedented. But now that I think we've had like 4 or 5 months of COVID, it does seem we're beginning to emerge. I mean, the economy, of course, has begun to open up. I think, many of us, or maybe all of us, have gotten somewhat accustomed to working around COVID. It's a terrible disease, but we're trying to make the best of it that we can. So I do think that I see the solar market, the renewable energy market, beginning to come back in some form. I think the interesting thing is, as of last year and even this year, solar will be the largest source of new power generation in the United States, and that's amazing. To see how far solar power has come in the U.S. in a relatively short period of time, going from a minuscule source of power to really now being the greatest add every year. So that is quite substantial. And of course, that's been driven by the amazing accomplishments of our industry, reducing the costs of solar quite dramatically over a number of years. And that's what makes this market uptake possible. So the industry continues to do its part. We've had stops and starts on the policy front, but nonetheless we've seen continued growth in the market. And I think when we look at what's the impact of COVID, the analysis shows, yes, that the market is a bit down this year compared to what was expected. We've seen residential, the distributed market, off about 31%, and utility scale, mostly kind of delayed. But we're still expecting a really robust year this year in terms of total gigawatts deployed. We had 14 gigawatts in 2019. We're expecting 18 gigawatts in 2020. So it's still amazing, even despite COVID.
Mhm.
But this course tees up an opportunity, to move ahead.
One
So
of
I
the
think,
pieces of research that I saw just recently was that consumer interest has not been reduced. It's actually been increased during this period of time.
I think I think that, Fred, that's the key point. With the country locked down, really, and many people, if not really all of us, virtually, except for some essential, though some essential in our economy, we've all been working remotely, working from home. And I think that, this is something that we, kind of a trend we had begun to see with a lot of more flexibility with technology. It's only been accelerated in the response to COVID.
Mhm.
So I think people working from home are going to want to make sure they have reliable power going forward. They're going to want to make sure it's the cheapest power possible. And I think they're concerned about this sustainability. So it doesn't surprise me at all that we're seeing increased interest in solar, especially on the residential side. I think even on the commercial side.
Mhm.
So I think that's really quite interesting. And I expect that demand, especially on the distributed side, to pick up as a result, accelerate.
Mhm.
So, COVID has brought a lot of near-term changes to the U.S. and the world, with a real impact and some uncertainty going forward, though it does seem we're beginning to emerge. But at the same time, I think it's accelerated some trends that were ongoing, and that perhaps especially in our power markets, we'll see a shift that will endure. More people working from home. I still think there's overall need for industrial demand, but I think that's likely to continue. We are likely to see continued interest on the corporate side and in the industrial side to procure more solar and renewable energy. So I think those trends continue.
So what do you see?
But some shift.
Yeah. So what do you see happening on the legislative side?
Yeah.
And maybe after that, regulatory.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I wanted to start with what's happening in the solar market,
Yep.
because I think that does impact the policy very much.
Mm.
I think most of us know, we have still the existing investment tax credit that is ramped down. This year, 2020, the ITC is at 26%. Last year it was 30%. Next year it moves down to 22% as part of the 2015 deal that was struck in Congress, for a ramp down in return for longer term continuity of support. So we see that ramp down, and then eventually after 2021, we're supposed to revert back to a 10% permanent commercial tax credit. So that's the path we're on right now. But of course, there has been significant interest, including solar and renewable energy, as part of a stimulus package to,
Yep.
Not only help the larger economy, but including particular sectors, including clean energy. We have not had bipartisan support for that. There have been some very robust proposals that have been drafted, especially in the Democratic House, but we haven't seen the support across the board. What we did see earlier in the spring, not too long after COVID hit, there was the bipartisan Senate and House Senate request to the Treasury, to the IRS, to provide some relief in the implementation of the tax credits, to recognize that COVID is having an impact in the market.
Mm-hmm.
For solar, the issue is that, that the IRS has changed, modified slightly the beginning construction terms, allowing for an extension of when the tax credit can be used, really, allowing for those who were purchasing solar last year in 2019 with delivery in 2020, giving an extension as to when you can take delays and still use the maximum solar tax credit.
Mm-hmm.
This is something the industry had sought under current implementation of the rules to qualify for the safe harbor in the use of the tax credit. You had to take delivery of the solar equipment within 3.5 months of paying. Well, became very difficult with the lockdown. So the IRS has extended that through October 15th of this year, 2020, allowing for a longer term to take the equipment. And then you don't have to take actual physical delivery as long as you take title. So that's providing some important relief, temporary relief during this COVID outbreak to better manage, for the solar industry, what was in the pipeline. There was bipartisan support for that. It's helpful. The industry wanted it. It does, help the industry continue in 2020 and then in position for 2021. Actually, the IRS also helped the wind industry in that as well by extending by a year the commence construction provision in the IRS, allowing for continued construction of wind projects a year longer to acknowledge that we did have this freeze in 2020. So I think that's important. In terms of on the tax policies to kind of complete this picture here, again, like you mentioned, there have been very significant proposals introduced on the House side with efforts to try to include them in the stimulus package. Again, that hasn't been accepted yet on the Republican side, but the House, Democrats have proposed, significant extensions of the ITC and the PTC, enabling an energy storage credit as well. So the idea is to extend those credits for the ITC 30% through the end of 2025, and then have a ramp down in 26 and 2027. So, a longer term effort to, stimulate more investment and development in solar to help deal with COVID, but even in the post-COVID area. So this is a longer term support, but I think, that hangs out there. And then there's, the Democrats in the House have also put together a long-term climate package that does include support for renewable energy, really a shift to a single production tax credit for renewable and clean energy. So there's still significant support for tax policy in the Congress. We've seen mostly from Democratic proposals this year, but we've also had significant support for some at least interim measures on a bipartisan basis. And I think going forward, once we get through COVID, we'll see what happens after the elections, because that's critical as to what will happen here. But we're likely to see some long-term support for a continued renewable energy investment. Fred, I'll go ahead and stop there and see if there's anything, any particular point we want to get to, that you would like me to emphasize.
Well, wondering about how this all plays out for Solar Valley. And so thinking a little bit about some of the legislators around here, some of the people that are getting involved, and some of the legislation. We had, for instance, Eduardo Garcia on for our advanced webinar for the conference, who is stepping up. There are several other people. We have, for the conference, we have supervisors Hagman and Perez from San Bernardino and Riverside County. So we're trying to build a little bit of momentum here and show people that if you sort of pull together and pull in the same direction, that you can get some significant stuff done. So talk a little bit about what you see.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I think what I described about what's happening on the policy front, the tax credits, definitely has application in the area, in the Solar Valley area, to help continue, market momentum for solar. And I think these longer term proposals would, bode, very well for continued deployment. I would just add that, the cost structures now of solar is so cost competitive that we're going to continue to see solar growth, solar investment, including in the Valley. The issue, I think, is sometimes what's the level of policy support, because that can help accelerate and even add to the opportunity.
Yeah.
The congressional delegation from that area of the world has a long history of being very supportive for these tax incentives and other policies to promote solar, because of the opportunity for these technologies to make a difference in that area of California, to help diversify power, to reduce emissions. We all know about the air quality issues in that region, and also to help address long-term concerns about climate. So those, the members there, most, really on a bipartisan basis, have been supportive. But I think, Mike Thompson, who's a Democrat from Northern California in the kind of what is the Sacramento Fairfield area. He's actually the lead sponsor of that House Democratic proposal to really dramatically increase the tax credits through 2025. But that's something that the delegation has supported, especially the Democrats from that area of the world over a period of time. So that all this really would, tends to complement, what the locals are trying to do on the ground in the Solar Valley to help drive investment and deployment. Again, where we see federal, state, and even local policy helping to take advantage of the attributes that solar offers.
So that's interesting, because one of the challenges that we have is trying to integrate policies at the different levels, call it, and when you get down to the local level, there are some pushbacks that have significance. So one of the things that we're grappling with is how to try to align policies top to bottom so that things can get done. Now, for instance, on the federal side, the BLM is involved in these two counties to a significant degree, and they have rules and regulations. They have sensitivities with respect to certain species, and they have a certain way of curating all of that. And just as an example, one of their rules has ruled out a lot of territory because they did a high-level survey, and the particular thing they were worried about didn't show up on that high-level survey. But what they said was, don't build near these guys. And as it happens, if you look down a couple of layers, these guys are everywhere. So they just ruled out a whole swath of territory. There's that sort of thing still going on. So one of the ideas that I had, and you should be uniquely familiar with this. Remember what the military did with their what they called the DoD clearinghouse? Yeah. So maybe the counties could get together and actually create a clearinghouse where people could go and say, listen, this is what we're doing. This is what we're thinking about doing. Do you have any guidance around where we could or couldn't be successful with this?
No, I think, Fred, the Solar Valley Conference, the good work you guys are doing at UC Riverside, I think can actually play a really important role bringing all the levels of government together in collaboration with industry and local leaders to look at how they collaborate, how they integrate and operate. Because I think there is broad interest at DoD and BLM to support solar development. We've seen that over a number of years now. We've seen that on a bipartisan basis. We've seen great state policy in California over the years. We've got some still very effective tax credits, tax policy. So and then I think really for this to work optimally, it's when you converge all the entities, convene all the entities, you sort through these issues to ensure that the policies, the policymakers are all kind of headed in the right direction. I think that's really important. I think what you described at the BLM is a good case in point, because the military, the private sector has had a great interest in developing solar technology. But we also do have concerns about land management. We have species protection requirements and this kind of thing. So I think these things need to be integrated to really sort this out and to optimize the resource and move the market together. A lot of the interest, of course, in developing this solar is to tap into the environmental attributes, which is shared by those who are concerned about land management. So I think there's still a huge amount of overlap, I think, to help get this all right, approach development and conservation protection in a balanced way. But that's why with the Solar Valley effort, your initiative at UC Riverside really is critical to optimize the development and across the board.
So there's a group out here called the Inland Empire Growth Opportunity, IEGO. that support the consortium and the conference. And really, what you mentioned earlier about using renewables, solar in this case, solar and storage, as a way through and out of COVID, I think it may turn out to be very important for us.
I think it really again presents another important rationale why we should do more solar. Why homeowners and businesses ought to be generating their own solar power. They want to make sure they have quality power, reliable, resilient power on site. Yes, for those of us working out of our homes or remotely, now our homes are even more importantly are our offices, and we've just got to have those operate if we're going to continue to integrate into the larger economy. So I think that's just going to add interest in solar, especially coupled with storage, so that you have reliable 24/7, 365 power going forward across the board. So we'd already seen movement that direction, but I think that COVID hastens that, because if more of us are going to be working remotely, and even though now I think even if people are allowed to go back into offices more so, and we'll see more and more of that, there's still a lot of functions that we've seen can work very effectively and efficiently from home. Mm-hmm. And when you think of companies, paying exorbitant retail or commercial real estate rental fees and so on, with a lot of people wanting to work home, work remotely, work even far away from their facilities, give them flexibility where to live. But those people to be, to successful, to make that kind of model work, they're going to have reliable power. And that's, I think, where solar and storage steps in. So I think that it's going to, be a boon to, this kind of economy. And I think where, again, communities like, the Solar Valley come together and, help lay the groundwork to promote this, to allow the industry and others, investors, to, work as efficiently as possible. I think that is going to help drive that kind of investment and deployment.
Yeah, I mean, having the resource to begin with really sort of makes you think in that direction. And if you can add jobs and green economy and cleaner air and all of that to it, why not?
You got it. You got it. I mean, that's like that area of California is just, is a perfect place to develop here. And then, of course, the community is well positioned to not only derive the direct benefits of solar generation and storage, but the economic benefits to be a center for jobs and deployment and so on. So I think it's a great opportunity for those communities who want to get ahead of the curve.
Yeah, great thoughts. So
I think about like some of the big huge corporates. Again, with their employees working remotely, I could see where some of the homeowners, the people who are working remotely, can be even helped by their companies on this front. Mm-hmm. So, it's an interesting dynamic. It's another shift in the market that could be quite profound, but again, an opportunity for solar and clean energy.
Right. It raises the whole issue of microgrids, which, of course, we're focused on with the conference as well. And so all of the integration becomes really quite key. One of the people that we have with us in this effort is Ed Smeloff, who is the Director of Grid Integration for Vote Solar. You remember Ed. And so working on these types of issues of being able to deploy and integrate quickly it really actually is coming along quite nicely now. It's being pushed by, as you said, this latest pandemic. Interestingly, it's forced people to get to adjust, call it adapt, and so.
And I would just add, Fred, everything's aligning, right? Costs are way down. Yep. We're now seeing solar, the largest share of new power generation in the United States. Remember where we were just a few years ago?
Yep.
And then we, solar, of course, enjoys the benefits of being distributed. You've got now companies that, have got in homes that need to have reliable power at the point of demand. just a great opportunity. You mentioned Ed. Ed's been, Ed and others have been involved in this space for many years, to help leading the way, and I think this is a new way. I left ACOR at the end of last year. I've got my own consulting company, call it Eagle Energy, to help, working with companies and organizations to help in this area altogether, use more renewable energy, deploy, and including also energy storage. So it's a great opportunity. It does open up some new avenues. So there is silver lining from these tectonic shifts that have been occurring, and including this shift that has been accelerated by the advent of this unforeseen pandemic. So.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that that the industry at the residential scale at least has reported is that more of their transactions are occurring online.
Yeah, sure.
Obviously, less face-to-face stuff, more online. It's quicker, it's easier. It's interesting what it takes to sort of push people or pull people in that direction. Then the other thing,
well, I think that there's been this question about the need to go from home to home in terms of sales or customer acquisition, but frankly, as we all know, the satellite technology has been embraced by the solar and renewable energy industry. People, if customer wants it, they can minimize that person-to-person contact, and actually can do, to incorporate solar on their homes, using modern technology. So you can do the point is you can acquire solar, but you can respect the social distancing that's necessary to help address the pandemic. So with that technology, and forecasting, the forecasting technology as well. I mean, the industry through its innovation is making solar about as easy as possible to acquire for, virtually for anybody. So that's only going to help, help the industry weather this uncertainty and this storm of the pandemic.
So what we do see is what we're hoping to build is sort of a cluster of clean, green energy business and deployment in the valley, and watch it grow. Now, one of the things that we noticed right away when the commute was reduced was that air quality here improved markedly and right away. And so with things of that nature being shown people, if we can now do it not in sort of an artificial way, but in a deployment way, I think we do have the capability to have tremendous impact. So
I think that's right. And the pandemic is really forced some dramatic changes to weather it. And even despite that, there's been a lot of difficulty and suffering. But you can see, I think the air quality issues is poignant. With the reduced traffic, and then think about the quality of life through. If you guys in California don't have to commute on those freeways all the time, but that's the same case. I'm in the Washington D.C. area. It's the same thing. We've seen a dramatic decline in traffic. People are working from home. It seems to be working for a lot of people, if not most people. Again, that's going to probably continue. It's going to change the way we operate, whether working from home, reduce, time spent in traffic and commuting.
Yeah. Well, there's the word.
Reduce centralized gathering in offices and so on.
I have always for a long time felt that the commute is probably the single most wasteful and harmful thing we do to the planet.
You can see it every day in California, right? Sometimes the weekends are really nice. You don't have as much drive time for people. As soon as Monday morning hits, the pollution in the basin is poignant. Yeah. And that has really significant health implications as well. So this does change things, quite dramatically and interestingly. Yeah. But we see that across the country as well. So,
well, maybe we should just leave it at that. And I've definitely enjoyed the conversation. Thank you very much for this time and your thoughts. And we shall check in soon again.
Excellent, Fred. Well, I wish you all a terrific conference coming up. And I'm sure it will be a great one. Issues are timely, and getting all the key people together is always useful. And I look forward to seeing you guys, carrying forward very successfully.
Thanks, Todd, very much.
Thanks, Fred. Good to catch up.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye.